Hey guys, so I wanted to talk to you about what my favorite cycle tracking app is. Now, I think first off, we should talk about what ones I've used in the past and like for what purpose or what reason I had to choosing those. So when I was only tracking my periods, so from one period to the next, I was tracking with Clue. Now, it was okay, it was decent. It did try to predict when my next periods would be, which it was always horribly wrong because my cycles are inherently a little bit more irregular, but I think it did get the job done, and it was all right. Now, once I started to focus on balancing my hormones naturally, and I found cycle tracking, that I was like, okay, this is something I wanted to look into, and I took a couple classes, read Taking Charge of Your Fertility, which is an amazing resource if you want to get started on figuring out how to track your cycle from on like a daily basis. So the app I was using for that one was Kandara. Now Kandara was okay. It was kind of, I guess, basic would be the way to describe it. It had very distinct descriptions of things, and I didn't really feel like those descriptions were matching what I was seeing. So there was always that like discrepancy, but it was okay. It got the job done, which I think was like the most important part, and it was also free. And then I stumbled upon Read Your Body. I heard a lot of really good recommendations for it, and it is the one that I've been using now for, I want to say, over a year. Now, the reason I really like Read Your Body is because it is so intuitive and customizable that you can really tweak it to whatever you want. If you want to just chart from one period to the next, you can definitely do that and customize it for it to be like that. Or if you want to be tracking your cycle on a daily basis, you can customize it in a way that suits whatever cycle tracking you're trying to do. Now, I'll walk you through it. I have it here on my tablet because my phone is the one that's currently recording, so yeah. So a couple of things I really like about it. So it has the temperature, it has on the side of it, if you do take your temperature outside of like the window when you should. So for instance, if you're cycle charting, ideally you would be wanting to take your basal body temperature either 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after whatever you set your alarm on, like the 1 hour window where you would be taking your temperature, because as we wake up, our bodies will naturally raise that basal body temperature, which is what we are charting. So I do like that it has that on the side. It also has like a little disturbed button. So for instance, if you get outside of that little window, then you'll be able to identify that that temperature could be biased. Now, underneath that, it has different fluids. So by fluids, it's talking about cervical fluid that does range depending on where we are in our cycle, because it's directly impacted by estrogen. So whenever there is more estrogen, say closer towards ovulation, the more type of cervical fluid you will see. So what I really like about it is that it doesn't make these descriptions and then you have to fit what you are seeing into those set descriptions. Instead, you can name them whatever you want to name them. And that is honestly really good because not everyone, for instance, sees egg whitey cervical fluid or like the description or like the language around egg whitey cervical fluid, for instance. And I feel like language and how we relate to our bodies is so important. So yeah, I definitely like that you are able to describe it any way you want to and be able to customize it in that way. Okay, so there's the cervical fluid aspect of it, but then there's other fluids. So here you would put in when you start bleeding, if you're spotting or not, if you want to start a new cycle, or if it was obscured, for instance, if you use some kind of lubrication that could mask if there is cervical fluid present or not. Now, the start of the new cycle, I really like that because you can have your period without ovulating and without it being like a true first day of your cycle. Or if you're just mid-cycle spotting from ovulation itself, which is also common, doesn't necessarily mean that it is a brand new cycle. It is just halfway. So I do like that there's like a little toggle to have that option. And then underneath that is intimacy. So there's different types, which I like, which you'll be able to kind of keep track of. There's sensation. So sensation is if you feel like a certain like wetness or something, you'll be able to write that in there. Now you can also track your cervix position with your cervix does change depending on where you are in your cycle, depending on if there's estrogen present or not. So that is an option that you can track. And there's also different information that you can track on the chart itself. So for instance, for mine, so there is luteal mucus. So that is a different type of cervical fluid that you see in your luteal phase. So you can keep track of that. I keep track of my menstrual cramps. So either level 1 through 3, how bad it is. Breast tenderness, also level 1 through 3. Ovulation pain, if you do get that or not. And then I also keep track of just sex drive because that gives me an indication of where I might be getting close to ovulation. And then there is a plethora of different things that you can chart. So, for instance, the ones I chart are booby checks. So, I do try to do a breast exam roughly around cycle day 5 because I've noticed that that is when they aren't really tender anymore and it's right before estrogen starts to ramp up, which could also cause tenderness. So, I feel like cycle day 5 I think is recommended for when you do want to do breast exams. Other things I keep track of are my energy levels, so levels 1 through 3. Feels, so when I'm feeling a little bit more emotional than usual, I take note of that to see if there's any type of patterns, hormonal patterns that are impacting that. Restless sleep, so because that can impact your basal body temperature that you're tracking. If you do want to track your cycle on a day to day basis, I have that in there as well. Feeling anxious, travel, or stress, all of these things are the ones that really impact my cycle and really make it so that my cycles become extended. So, as I'm sitting here talking on like cycle day 52, I believe, and it is because I had like a lot of stress in my previous cycle. So, I like to keep track of that just to see how much of it is actually impacting my cycle. And then there's like miscellaneous things that you can keep track of. Maybe you're experiencing more breakouts or not. I'm getting some regular acupuncture, so I like to note that down. If I'm changing up my herbal blends, all of these things I can write down and just see if there is any patterns, because that is, I think, what the main goal with all of these are, is from cycle to cycle. Is there any patterns that are changing your cycle? And then at the bottom, there's like a little note section. You could include pictures in there. So what I like is that is really customizable to what you want. That is just some of the things that I like to keep track of. And if you want to keep track of other things, then you can write them out in there. If you want it to be a toggle, if you want it to be like on a scale, I think that freedom of naming things the way you want to name them or keeping track of things that you want to keep track of that are important to you is why I like this app so much. Now it does come with a subscription, so I want to say it's like a $280 a month subscription, or you can do like the annual one. So far, I've been only doing like the monthly one, which is like 280, I think. And I'd say it's definitely worth it, especially because the people that are behind it, so the creators of it, are also cycle tracking educators. So they are like deep in the information, and that's why it is so intuitive and why I think it is so easy to use. And something that I found super cool is my mentor, so the person that I'm learning to be certified as a cycle tracking educator as well. She was one of the people that they reached out to and kind of got some feedback on their app, and she continues to give them feedback on the app, which I think is super cool. And I didn't know about that until I wanted to be certified with my mentor. And that she just kind of like mentioned that offhandly, and I was just like, what? That's super cool. That's it. Super great app. I really like it. It is also safe, which right now we are wondering if period apps are safe. These are safe because they're not shared anywhere, so they're not stored anywhere. It is only on your personal device, and it can be encrypted and backed up and saved in different formats. And it's nice that they took those additional steps for those that are extra cautious about having that kind of information on an app. So yeah, let me know down below if you've used this app or if you've used another app to track your period, track your cycle, and how you've liked it. All right, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll be seeing you next time.